across the country. We have a huge number of programs.
India is forever under construction.
Yes. So therefore, cuts, I mean, every fiber network suffers nearly about 4 cuts per 1,000 kilometers per month. So the cost of maintaining an fiber optic network is very onerous. So therefore, and coupled with that, we have a low, I mean, what do you say, expected revenue base in the rural areas. So it's a very hard market, unlike the urban areas. So therefore, the private sector perception of this particular value of this particular network is a little low. I mean, I think we can well understand that. Therefore, I think we have decided to go forward with the public sector model, wherein BSNL will maintain it, run it, and then monetize the last mile. So we are not monetizing the whole network, but the last mile, where from the village point, I think they will take it to the households and maintain it and service the customer. And that's worked well, I think.
I'll come to BSNL and the revival package that the government announced for BSNL in a second, but let me get Mr. Subrahmanyam into the conversation as well. Mr. Subrahmanyam, you know, as part of the India at 75 vision, NITI Aayog had put together a strategy document, a strategy paper on the use of digital technologies, the use of digital innovation. As things currently stand, beyond Ayushman Bharat, beyond health and financial inclusion, where do you believe the next bed of innovation will lie, especially in the context of the development state that the NITI Aayog is pushing for?
Before I answer that, I'd like to actually take you back. What's the importance of digital public infrastructure? I think that's very, very important to understand. You see, I think the digital space grew in an area of benign neglect. Governments around the world allowed them to grow because I think that was required very early on. One didn't understand how these digital technologies would grow and how they would pan out in the long run. But over now, the last 20 years, people have actually realized that there are a lot of externalities that come out of this. There are network externalities, and actually a few firms can actually dominate the entire digital space. And that's where I think the digital public infrastructure concept becomes very, very important. I mean, it's very related to what we call technology commons. And commons are a public good. So there is a fundamental question. Is the digital architecture through which the world today, and certainly the world of the future, is going to be run by a few monopolies or oligopolies, or is it going to be left common on which a lot of innovation, technology, entrepreneurship can drive? And I think that's where India is a leader in 3 areas, and in the thought itself, in content, and most importantly in rollout. I mean, we have been rolling out it in billions. And therefore, you have so many examples of digital public infrastructure in India. And you've got the UPI, you've got Aadhaar, you've got the account aggregator stack, you've got CoWIN, you've got the agri stack coming up, you've got the logistics stack which is coming up, there's a labor stack in the pipeline. So NITI plays an interesting role. I mean, the role of NITI is, as a think tank of the government, its job is to ideate, incubate, and then transfer, the IIT of the government. So as the IIT of the government, I think it's done it successfully. It pushed digital payments. I think it's in the process of pushing a couple of other things. I mentioned agri, I've talked about labor, I've talked about logistics. I mean, the portal was conceived here, but then now you have a department taking it forward. So I see a bright future, and I see this space being an area which will actually drive Indian technology and much more Indian entrepreneurship in India and globally.
You know, that's a nice line that you've given us. NITI Aayog is the IIT for India, and I can see many will probably go with that headline tomorrow. It's a quotable quote there, Mr. Subrahmanyam. But, you know, I'll come back to you on the importance of the digital goods aspect that you spoke of and what we can now expect in the next phase of growth. But let me get to Dilip Asbe of NPCI. And before I get to you, Dilip, let me do a quick poll here of the audience. How many people here use UPI? Literally everybody in this room. Dilip, that should bring a big smile to your face.
Who didn't raise the hand, actually?
Who doesn't use UPI?
Yeah.
That's one solitary gentleman in the room, and okay, three people in this room who don't use UPI. So, well, the house is on your side, Dilip. But let me start by talking to you about something that has captured the headlines overnight, and I know you've spent a large part of your day clarifying that. What is the reason behind the charges that you've brought in? I know you've clarified that these charges don't impact you and me, i.e. the consumer. It is at the merchant's end that the charge applies. But explain to me the reason behind this, and I'll also tell you the fear in the mind of the customer, that this is only the start, that this is the start of charges being imposed on consumers for using UPI. The other fear is, look, consumer will have to pay one way or the other. The merchant will, in a way, get the consumer to pay. So I want you to clarify on the rationale behind these charges and whether this could lead to more such kind of charges.
So first of all, Shireen, there are two entities which are actually taking part in the merchant payments. One is the customer and second is the merchant. And obviously there is a P2M, which is person to merchant and person to person transactions in UPI or any other payment system. So one thing is very clear that customer never pays for any payment transaction, right? Whether it's a peer-to-peer or peer-to-merchant. Always merchant as a user of the payment system pays the nominal reasonable charges for the payment system. So that's the first principle. The second point is the UPI for the bank account, using the bank account is already free with the government notification. And again, if there is a review, if there is a change, again the government will have to decide on the next course on that. The notification which we issued was pertaining to the prepaid wallets, right?
Yeah.
Because with the RBI guideline, the wallets are now interoperable. And while they were already operating on the cards, they were not permitted in UPI. So to permit them in UPI, the interchange was permitted. So that's, I think, a nutshell clarified. Again, there as well, only the merchant pays, the consumer doesn't pay anything.
You've made that amply clear, not just here on the Rising India stage, but even in the NPCI press release that came out this morning, clarifying that the consumer doesn't need to pay.
Yeah.
But the larger question is, Dilip, when we're talking about moving to 1 billion transactions, which is what the aspiration is for you. You're anticipating a 10x growth from here by 2030. Someone's got to pay.
Yeah.
Who is going to invest? Where do you get the money from?
So again, it's a great question. And, today as we stand, you rightly said, the near-term goal, which is next 2 years to 3 years, we are looking at 1 billion transactions. We are at 30 crore on a daily basis. The peak transaction.
That does deserve a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. 30 crore transactions.
And it's all made in India, operated by India for the citizens. I think it's a great beginning, I must say that. It's not the end. We still have to grow 10x. So I think when we look at 1 billion a day or 10x growth, which is the 3 billion per day, which is the true potential of India, you are right. I think we need money. We need investments both on the customer side because there are 600 million eligible customers who can actually come inside the digital payments who are outside today. There are another 100 million merchants who are outside the digital payments who can come inside. So I think it is going to need money. As on date, the government is kind of giving the digital payment incentive to the ecosystem, and there is a dialogue with the ecosystem and the government, the stakeholders, that how do we grow UPI to 10x now, and how do we ensure that the awareness, education, the whole consumer and merchant onboarding for the large number takes place. Even if we don't do anything this year, it will happen in next 10 to 15 years' time. Now the question is, can we do this by 2030? I think that's the question which we are looking at, and I think it's an issue which is under discussion. So let's see how it progresses.